Alrighty, hello everyone. So today we are going to be working on 2-point perspective. That's 2-point perspective. 2-point perspective drawing. My camera will focus. There we go. So some things you're going to need in order for us to get started with this is you're going to want a pencil. It could be an ebony pencil. I'm using an ebony pencil, as you can see. Prism, ebony focus. Anyway, I have an eraser here, so you can use a number 2 pencil if you have one. You're going to need a ruler, and if you have a blending stump, you don't need one. You can always use your fingers, but you can use, if you have a blending stump, you definitely want to use that. That'll help with shading. So to get started with this, as I taught you guys in class, we're going to start with a horizon line. Again, this isn't entirely, you don't entirely need to do this for a 2-point perspective. I think I made my line completely crooked. Do not do what I just did, kids. Okay, let me erase this again. Made a little oopsie. Alright. So I have my horizon line, and the reason I'm drawing this is just so I know what plane I want my buildings to be on, because we're going to do a street scene. So the cool thing about 2-point perspective is it's not just one point on the horizon line, one vanishing point. Sorry, as I was saying, just like 1-point perspective, we had one vanishing point on the horizon line, and usually that was in the center, depending on where you want your vanishing point to go. It can go to the left, or it can go to the left, or it can go to the right. It can be in the center, whichever you decide. But with 2-point perspective, you need to have not one, but 2 vanishing points. So I'm going to put one of my vanishing points over here at one end, and I'm going to put my other vanishing point here at the other end. Now, depending on how you want to structure this, I like to label my vanishing points just to help me out. So let's say this is vanishing point 1, this is vanishing point 2. This tends to help, especially when if you're doing buildings from below the horizon line or above the horizon line. But we're not going to do that today, but still, it's a good habit to get in to have with you. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to, in 1-point perspective, you guys remember we made like a square. Well, this time we're actually going to do just a straight line, and not just any line, we're going to do a vertical line. So I'm holding my ruler, I'm making sure it's completely up and down. I'm going to just draw a line across my horizon line going up and down just like that. So go ahead and do that. Once you've drawn your vertical line, I like to think of it as 2 points on this line, so I like to add my little dots here. This will help you remember the dot-to-dot method that I have taught everyone. So these 2 dots have to go to each of these dots on the horizon line. So because I labeled these vanishing point dot number 1 and vanishing point dot number 2, I'm going to start with 1. So I'm going to line up my dots. I'm going to make sure they're aligned. I'm going to draw my line across there. Checking to make sure everything's aligned before I draw my line. You'll notice my lines might be a little bit darker than yours. That's fine. I usually tell you guys to go very light, so that way it's easier for you to erase any mistakes that you might make. But the reason I'm making mine dark is so you guys can see them. Okay? So I went dot to dot to this dot first, and then I went dot to dot to this dot. So now you should have like a kite shape, like if you had a kite on its side, that's what we got going on here. So now I have the makings of my street building on a corner. So like if somebody was standing on the street somewhere. So now I need to make this look more like a rectangular building. So what I need to do now is the same thing I did in the beginning. I'm going to take my line that I did for the corner of my building, and I'm just going to move it over. I'm going to decide on what size I want my building to be. That looks like a good size. I'm making sure my ruler is completely vertical. I'm going to draw a line from the top of my building to the bottom. just like that. Now I did it to this side. It's starting to look a little bit like a side of a building. I need to also do it to the side that's going toward vanishing point 2. So I'm going to do the same thing. And I'm just going to kind of eyeball it, making sure my ruler is again vertical. I'm going to draw my line. So there you go. I now have my 2-point perspective drawing on the side. I can start to erase as I finish my building. I can erase the lines going through the horizon line. I want to keep all my lines, of course, that are going to represent my building, but that horizon line in the center of my building I do not need anymore, so I can erase that. So now I have 2 sides of my building. What I'm going to show you next is how to add another structure next to your building. You can do the same technique on the other side. So if I show you on one side, it doesn't mean that this is the only side you can do this technique on. You can also do it on the opposite side. So let's say that we want to add a second building to this structure. And I know what you all are going to do right away. You're all just going to start adding lines all the way down the line. Do not do that. You can add different size buildings. Some of them can have little alleyways in between. So that is what I'm going to show you next. So let's say I wanted to do a taller building, but I want to add a little bit of space here. Make this, let's think of this as like an alleyway or some sort of little crevice behind my building. But I want to make my building pretty tall. I think I'm going to make it this tall. So I'm going to start up here to see how tall I want my building to go. And I'm going to go all the way down. I'm going to stop right at this bottom line because, again, that is where my street or my sidewalk of my street's going to be. So what I'm going to do now is I can erase this line going here because that is the side of my building. So I do not need that angle anymore. And I also don't need this horizon line. Just mark my lines. There we go. So now I want to make a little indent in here to show that this is a little crevice inside between these 2 buildings. So what everyone tends to do is go, they hold their ruler funky. What I want to do is, because I'm going in this direction, just like I did here, I'm going to use vanishing point 2 where my line going into the side of the building is going to go. Just like that. So now I have a little alleyway between this building and this building. I'm going to add the other side of my building. Again, making sure my lines are vertical with my ruler. Okay. Now I'm going to move my vanishing point line that I had right here that I'm erasing. I want the top of my building to be like this at an angle. So I'm going to match the angle of my building. Again, I want it to be pretty tall, but as you can see, I'm lining it up with my vanishing point 1. So depending on how tall I want my building to be, that looks about right. Clean up my lines. Erase this horizon line here, don't need that. So now I have this side of my building, the closest to vanishing point 1, but now I need to add the other, because this building is taller than this building, I need to add a vanishing point going toward vanishing point 2. So think of that dot to dot method that we did here, doing it at the top here. This is going to go to vanishing point 2. And I stopped halfway because I don't have to go all the way. If I wanted to go all the way, I can, and I'll just erase when I make changes to it. But because this building is behind this building, I'm just going to stop halfway. And now I want to do the side of my building, just from here to behind this building. As you can see, again, my ruler is completely vertical. It's not wonky in any way, so I'm just going to trim it and bring that line down. So there you go. I have two buildings on my street. I have one where if I was standing on the corner, this is where it would be, and then I have my other building here. So what I'm going to do now is show you guys how to do a series of windows and doors if you want to add some like fun things like that to your building. If you want to add siding or brick, you can do that with the same technique. So what I'm going to do is add my windows first. So I'm going to hold my ruler like I just did with this line. I'm going to hold it vertical. And I'm just creating little spaces of where I want my windows to go on my building. They can be any size you want. They don't have to be big. And I'm going to probably clean up my lines, so I'm not worried about the length of the lines right now. But now what I want to do is these points, just like this, all these angles went toward the vanishing points. But because it's on, these windows are on the closest to vanishing point 1, these angles are going to go to vanishing point 1, not vanishing point 2. That's where a lot of you make mistakes. So let me just line up my windows. I'm going to do this for both the top and the bottom of my windows. Just like that. And again, I said I could come back and clean up my lines if I don't want them to have those weird little line shapes. Cleaning them all up. So there you go. Once you you can add window panes if you want. If you're going to do the side of the window panes, you always want to do it at an angle. So there you go. I got two little windows on my building. Now let's say I want to add a door somewhere. Now I'm going to show you how to do a door, and I'm going to put my door on this side of the building so you guys can see me use the other vanishing point. So same thing I did with my windows. I'm going to draw my horizontal, or my vertical lines. Just two of them because I don't, have multiple doors. I'm just having one door. So I drew my two lines, and now I need to put these points going toward the vanishing point. And because, again, I'm on this side of the building, this is going to vanishing point 2. I can go back and clean up. I want this to be a double-sided door. I just line up my ruler, again making sure it's completely vertical. Draw a line down. Draw little doorknobs if I want. So there you go. I have a door, some windows. I can add as many windows and doors as I want. If I want to add some sort of siding to the side of my building, let's say it's got like house siding, which are those vertical, or those parallel lines that go across houses. This is how you would do that. You want to use your vanishing point depending on what side of your building you're going to draw your siding on. But let's say I'm using vanishing point 1 for this building in particular. I'm still using that angle. I'm kind of free measuring the space in between. So that would continue all the way down. If you had some windows, of course, you would put a line in between the windows. I can just draw some windows here just to give you guys an idea. I'll put just like one window. There's my little window. You'll notice sometimes where your horizon line is, you'll notice that your lines are completely parallel, and that means the angle has changed to just a straight line across, but that's because of the horizon line. So let me just show you how I can continue this. Again, I'm going in between my window so it doesn't look weird. Okay. Add a little door here. So there you go. That's kind of how you get started with these buildings. Now you can make these as intricate and detailed as you would like. What I'm going to show next before we finish up this lesson is how to draw any sort of things on the street. So if I wanted to have a sidewalk here, I would just think of this as the sidewalk, the beginning of your sidewalk here. I'm just going to hold my ruler at an angle from this point, and I'm just thinking from this point to my vanishing point this way. That's where my sidewalk is. Same thing going this way. Maybe it's a little more like that. So that could be like my street corner. I can draw like a little sliver of a line to show the thickness of my sidewalk if I really wanted to. Okay. But let's say I wanted to add some trees. Like let's say this is like a street corner with a lot of like trees out in the front. I would think about perspective, and I would use maybe this as my tool of like how tall I want my trees to be. I can hold an angle to, let's say I want them to go down to where the vanishing point 2 is. I'm just going to make like a very light line right there to kind of show how maybe tall I want my trees to go. So depending on the size of my door, my trees aren't going to be that big. I'm just going to draw a quick little sketch here. So there's one of my trees. It's growing. It's pretty tall. Maybe the leaves come up to here. Okay. So there's one of my trees on the street. Now, as you can see, as we get closer to the vanishing point, the line and the distance between the lines gets a little bit smaller and smaller, and a little bit less space. You want to think of that. So I'm going to add a smaller little place where my plant's going to grow, and there's where my other tree is growing. There's the top of my tree. Again, you can start to see how it went from this to this. It's a little bit smaller, and then as we get down here, it's almost as if my tree's teeny tiny because it's further away. Okay. So you'll notice the different perspective as it starts to go down closest to the vanishing point. It gets smaller and smaller. Your buildings will be the same way. When you start to do your windows furthest from where you're viewing and it gets closer to the vanishing point, your windows will be smaller, your doors will be smaller, everything will seem really smaller and a little more squished because it's getting closer to the vanishing point. Any other details you can add cars to the street, you can have people walking around, you could add more windows, more details, you could have a sign above, like a neon sign, depending on where your city's going to be. But that concludes our 2-point perspective drawings. I hope everyone enjoyed this lesson. Please practice hard and never give up. All right, bye.